Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today this is a video that I've wanted to film for years and I just never knew when to do it, and I didn't want it, sorry, I kicked my tripod. I didn't want it to come off as like, hey, I'm a new YouTuber who's doing books and I'm gonna push like my work on you guys, and I don't want to ever do that. I don't ever want to force people to read something that they don't want to read, because I went through that experience a lot when I was younger. I was always forced to read things that I never wanted to read, and even to this day I still am forced to do that, sadly, because of school, which really takes the fun out of writing and reading, to be honest. If you become an English major and you really love to write and read, you might not like doing that after. You just get so burnt out and tired all the time. And I am going to be talking a little bit about school along with this stuff, and like my writing process and like my life journey and how I've came here. So this is going to be like a journal type thing, more so for me, because I've always wanted to do this. I've seen a few booktubers done this before in the past, and normally they do it later on in their career. But honestly, I want to do it now, even though I think I've mentioned this on my channel before. I always thought I should have made this channel years and years and years ago. I really wanted to actually do this channel in 2012, and I didn't actually kickstart it until a year later, but it wasn't a book channel, it was something else. And it wasn't until I think 2017 when I actually officially made it a book channel. And in no reason did I want to make this channel because of other reasons. I wanted to really do this to do reviews and stuff like that. But if you're a really big fan of books and you really love English, sometimes you actually want to write your own material. And I've actually written a lot of stories that never really became novels, and they're more so just pieces that I've written. And some of them I do want to develop in the future, just not right now. And some of them I've written for classes, and I've always felt really uncomfortable doing that for classes, just because I'm one of those vulnerable writers who does write with their feelings and takes inspiration from their own experiences. So kind of putting that out there and letting the class and students read that stuff is really personal and very deep, and you do get criticism sometimes, and you do get critiques, but I'm doing this today. I'm not gonna actually like go into depth about every single story I've ever written, but this is more like a journal type blog thing for me, especially now that we're all in quarantine, and I love writing about, you know, experiences that I go through. I've never been a journaler type person. I've tried doing diaries in the past before, but I've never been that kind of person to jot down everything that happens in my day. And like I've mentioned in a few videos, I have gone to therapy even when I was young, and now I'm redoing it on my own terms. And even with my therapist, I've suggested telling them like I think I should write more and express my feelings through that. And I haven't written, like really sat down and written in a long time. And by no means do I think any of this stuff will actually ever be good that I write, because I'm a crappy writer. I'm gonna say it out loud. And I've said it to a lot of people, and this video is kind of gonna be like an entry video of what I've been doing, what I'm working on, and my journey kind of stuff. So it might be a little bit of a long one, and I don't know yet. I don't know yet. So writing. I think I've talked a little bit about like my own experience with reading on this channel when I was really young, and I feel like I'm gonna be a little bit personal on this. I have never been a very smart person when I was younger, and I don't think any of us really know everything when we're young, but like when I was young, I used to really struggle in school, and for the longest time my parents thought that I was dyslexic, and I'm not really sure if I am. at one point they did kind of tell me like you might actually be a little bit dyslexic. Even to this day, some words actually don't really make sense in my head. I still get confused between does and dose. Surprisingly, they look exactly the same to me, even though I know that there's a difference between the two. I used to have a really hard time figuring out my left from my right when I was a kid, and I used to misspell like certain words with B's and D's for a long time. I had a really hard time figuring that out. And like my mom she wasn't like, oh, completely like I don't know anything. She really didn't go to college. She did go to college, but she never got to finish. She went twice and she never finished, and it was her dream for me to go to college. And my dad went to college, but he never finished either, and it's really weird because he was a really smart guy, but he kind of basically blew it with that. And so my mom really didn't have the knowledge to teach me very well. She also isn't from here. She's from Mexico. She was born there and I was born here. So there wasn't like a speech impediment thing, but it was more so that she just didn't know how to teach me really well because she didn't really have a lot of experience with it. And she was a really, really great reader. I'm very surprised. Not surprised, but like she really loved books. She loved reading. She had a bookshelf with a bunch of books that she were more like how-to books and how to improve yourself and things like that. I knew she was a really great, like really avid reader. It didn't rub off on me though. So when I was young, I had such a bad time at figuring out reading. Reading was like the worst thing for me growing up as a kid. I was okay at math and science, surprisingly, and actually to this day my ACT score is actually the highest in my ACT score is English and reading, which I'm really proud of, and we're gonna get to that later. But I was more so better at science and math, but I never really wanted to do anything with that. At one point though, I did want to be a forensic filist because as you guys know in some of my past videos, I love investigation shows. I've always kind of wanted to do something like that, and I used to watch a lot of forensic files when I was a kid. But aside from that, my English really sucked as a kid growing up with reading. I was always in those reading classes for, you know, kids who aren't really great at it. And it's not that they're like, you know, like slow. I always felt not like they were like we were behind, and I always felt really out of place. Especially because they would take us out of other classes, and then I felt like I was getting really weird stares from people, and I was already a shy kid to begin with, and I moved around a lot. So whenever that would happen to me, I kind of just felt really out of place. And I think also moving around kind of added to me not being able to read very well, because I'm pretty sure I missed a few lessons on like English and writing and grammar and stuff like that, because to this day I still don't even know a lot of that stuff. We're gonna get into that. So basically, I was told I think I was told either I was a grade level behind or I was three grade levels behind in my reading than everybody else. And every single time people, like in like these group discussions that we would have where it was like, you know, you get taken out of class, whatever, we would read like small little like kind of basically like chapter books type stuff. And I felt like such an idiot in these classes. If anybody has ever like experienced this, I always felt like I'm an outcast, I'm stupid, I'm like not like everybody else, I'm like behind everybody, and like I just felt really like insecure about myself. And that reading and writing have always been an insecurity of mine. Even to this day, especially grammar has been an insecurity of mine. So this is like, I feel like I'm getting personal in this story, so this is like a story time kind of stuff. So what had happened was they would always force reading down on me, and I feel like that was a huge part of why I never wanted to read, because I was always told you have to read, you have to read, you have to read. And at one point I literally had a professor tell me and I was like 7 at the time, maybe 5 or 6 or something like that. I was like maybe around 1st grade or 2nd grade, and I had a teacher tell me, they looked at me and they were like, if you don't learn how to read, you're never gonna get anywhere in life. You're gonna end up homeless, you're not gonna have like a life at all. You're not gonna have a career, you're not gonna have anything. You're not even gonna be able to sign your own name. So being told this at a young age really discouraged me, because I literally thought that I was an idiot and that I wasn't gonna make it in the world. And there were a lot of other things too that had to do with that. And I even made a vow to myself when I was a kid. I was gonna be like, I'm gonna prove to these people that I can do all of this stuff on my own without having to, you know, be the best at reading. I can do everything else. And I actually got better at every other, you know, genre of school than I did with reading. It wasn't until, and I think I talked a little bit about this on my channel, it wasn't until I had just turned 14 and I experienced a loss. Somebody really, really close to me passed away in 2012, and it's been about 7 years now since, and I was already like a really like quiet, shy kid to begin with, and then experiencing that, it does make you go into a depression. And to this day, I still have some reoccurring thoughts every now and then, but I have been going to therapy about it. And there are a lot of life experiences that I've learned through the past years because of what happened and how it snowballs later on, which I've written about, and I do want to share to you guys in a little bit. I don't know if I will ever like publicly post any of this stuff, because I do want to actually submit it to places. But when I experienced that loss, and this all has to do with my writing now, so I will make a point about that. So when I experienced that loss, I didn't really have a coping mechanism at the time. I've always known that I was really artistic. To this day, you guys have already seen my art video. I do a lot of art stuff. Very artistic. I love just zoning out and just drawing and just going at it. And my mom was also a really artistic person too, so I felt like I was connected with her through that. But at the time, I didn't want to draw anything happy. I didn't want to do anything artistic. And there was a point where I was really, really depressed, really, really sad, and I was living with a relative of mine who took care of me really, really well, and I loved them for it. And of course, I didn't like reading. I hated it, and then I was always forced to read during the summer, and I hated that. And then one day, and I think I talked about this a few times, because I switched schools, I had to change my reading plans, so I had to I had to read another book instead of the book that I already read, which was 13 Reasons. And so we went to Barnes & Noble, and my cousin who was taking care of me at the time, she's like, okay, which book do you want to pick? Because we don't have all day. So I literally, this is how I fell in love with my favorite book series of all time, which was the first ever book that, you know, really made me want to read more. And I am so grateful to this author for creating this beautiful, beautiful world that she created. So it was either a choice between the two major books that were pretty much like big around this time. And this was like a couple of months after what had happened with me, with the whole loss. And so it was either a choice between Divergent or the Infernal Devices series, the first book. So my head as a kid, this is what was going on in my head. I don't really want to read any of these books, and I only have like 2 or 3 weeks to finish reading this book and write an essay about it. And I'm a slow reader. Like, I was really, really bad at reading. I could like barely, like, I am not as fast of a reader as I am today as I was then. And so I was very, very slow at it, and I didn't like to read. So I was like, okay, well, which is the book that has less pages? And I looked at either one, and it was The Infernal Devices, Clockwork Angel, and I read that book in 3 days. That is how much I loved reading that book. Granted though, when I first read it, the beginning of it, I completely didn't really like pay attention to it, and I reread it, and then years later I found out, oh, actually they were demons and angels, and I really thought that it was a book about detectives in the beginning. So you could tell that my mind wasn't really there in the beginning. But after that book, I read it in 3 days, and then after I read it, I was like going to my cousin and telling her, hey, can we go to Barnes & Noble? I want to get the second book. And then I found out that there was a third book, and then I found out that there was a whole Mortal Instruments series and expansion of this whole entire universe. And ever since then, I've always loved reading. Like, that was the book that really like inspired me. I remember when I was reading it, and I think I was reading like the second or the third, I was reading the second book of it, and one of my cousins, she was like, oh, what are you reading? I'm like, it's this really cool weird universe and this and this and this, and she's like, oh, that seems really weird, and I'm like, yeah, but I really like it. So it was the first time that I ever really like fell in love with a book. So with all of that being said, sorry about the long intro. This might be a 2-part video, I'm not sure yet. With all that being said, my reading level is way better than it was when I was younger. I am at the level a normal person should be at in my age, and I love it. I love it. Even though I haven't read it in a while, I still really do love reading. And when I get into it, I really get into it. It was also really my coping mechanism for that time period. I had read over 100 books within a year. From a kid who never really knew how to read very well and basically only read a book when they were told to reading 100 books within a year as a coping mechanism. And there were times that a lot of people would tell me, oh, you shouldn't have it as a coping mechanism because, you know, this and this and this and whatever, but reading for fun and for a coping mechanism is better than, you know, going down the route of drugs and self-mutilation and all that stuff, because I would have actually probably went down that route had I not discovered my love for reading. So, ooh, sorry, my back is like killing me. We're gonna have to, lay down for a little bit. So with that being said, let's talk about my writing now, because my reading excelled so much over the span of like a year and a half. And this was around the time when I had just hit high school. I had just turned 14, like I said. That's around the time that you go to high school. And so the first like year and a half, I was still stuck in these reading programs. And by the time I was like, by the end of the year and a half, I was completely like excelling in my reading. And I was stuck in this reading program, and I was like pretty much like passing everything, and they were just like, oh, like, why are you in here? You shouldn't even be in here. How did you excel so much? And I was like, because I fell in love with reading. So from that point, I really was in love with the Infernal Devices, the Hunger Games, Diversion. I read all of the, you know, major series, Maze Runner, Percy Jackson. All of those series were like some of my favorite books. And I had an idea, okay? I have had this book idea since 2015. I've had this idea for a long time, okay? And I never really talked about it. I knew I kind of wanted to do a novel. I wanted to write something. And even though my reading went really high, I was never really a great writer. To this day, I'm not the best, but I'm not as bad as I was going into high school. It was pretty bad. And so I knew I wanted to write something, but I always felt really not like I couldn't do it, because I felt, well, I suck at grammar. Just because I read a lot doesn't mean that I'm really great at English. I suck at English sentences. Half the time they don't make sense to me. All the grammar topics, everything about pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, making sure that there's like a conjunction, things like that never really made sense to me. To this day, they still don't really make sense to me. A coherent sentence, half the time I can't even figure out sentence fragments every now and then, but I have noticed I've been catching myself a little bit better on it because I've been writing more, which has helped. I'm not saying that, oh, I'm the worst writer in the world. I used to be. Now I'm getting better. So with all of this happening at the time, I had this idea to write a story. I didn't really think I was gonna write a novel at any point in my life. I didn't even know what I wanted to do with my life. For a long time, I wanted to be an actor or a singer or criminal justice type person, or maybe an artist. Even to this day, like after a couple of years, I've realized I wish I had done more like animation and art and graphic design type of stuff, which I have taken classes and that kind of stuff which if you guys have been noticing, my thumbnails are a little bit better because I've started doing more graphic design courses and things like that. And some of the art projects that I've posted on YouTube have been graphic design inspired, or done with Photoshop and Illustrator and things like that. So with all that being said, I still am not the best at grammar, but I went into college deciding to be a teacher originally. I wanted to be a reading teacher or a English teacher. I thought, hey, well, I really love reading and I don't want other kids to go through things that I had to go through, especially, you know, struggling with reading and then feeling like you're an outcast. I wanted to be one of those teachers that was a reading teacher that would actually help students and not make them feel like, hey, you're not like everybody else kind of thing. And I wanted to give my experience to them and help them in that sense. Teaching was not for me. Let's put it in those terms. I don't really do well in crowds, and I don't really like talking out loud, even though I'm talking on the internet. So eventually and the other reason why I fell into teaching was because when I went to college, pretty much everybody at my graduation around my senior year, all of my teachers and all of my advisors were like, so what are you gonna major in? What are you gonna major in? You have to choose a major. What are you gonna major in? And so I felt really pressured into doing something. And then I said, well, I wanna do something with English. And then somebody said, oh, teaching? And I'm like, yeah, okay, teaching. So pretty much I was kind of almost forced into doing that, even though I had the time to change it, and I did end up changing it to English. And English, I was in there's a bunch of different concentrations in it, so I concentrated in professional and creative writing. Like I said, suck at grammar. And not that like I don't think I would ever do professional writing. I have taken like 2 or 3 courses in professional writing. I've taken a few courses in English as well. So to be honest, I think I have enough skill in knowing about professional writing to have dropped it. So I dropped my professional writing concentration because the work that we were doing. And like I said, when you're an English major and you do so much of that, and then you come home and you try to write on something or work on something personal, it really sucks the fun out of it because you're over here analyzing and basically putting in a bunch of notes for professional writing in your courses, and then you go home and it just feels like work. So I was really drained, so I pretty much dropped it. So now I have creative writing as my major, and I have a minor in studio art. And actually, recently, I actually have found which major that I want to do afterwards, because I've been really thinking about this, and I think I'm going to do it, is I want to go to graduate school and I want to become a librarian. Ever since I fell in love with reading, me and my best friend would always volunteer at our local library for about 2.5 years. We were just always there all the time. One of our supervisors was always there, and she was always excited to see us there, and we were probably like the only 2 people that actually enjoyed going to the library. So then when I got to college, I ended up finding a job through my college campus, through the library that we have. And since then, I've been doing internships through them, and I really hope that I can be a part of their graduate program for library science. So for me, that's where I'm going down the route, and I'm really happy that I'm actually doing library science because I enjoy the work that they do. And if you were to ask me like 2 or 3 years ago going to college, I probably would have been like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. All I know is that I'm good at art and I like books. So, but I feel like library work would just be the best thing for me. And it's funny because a lot of my relatives, when I was growing up, they would always tell me, you should just become a librarian. You love books so much and you're always hanging out at the library. Why don't you just like find a job there already? So even to this day, when I bring it up, my family is like, that's such a great job for you to be a librarian. Like you love books. You're perfect for it. You might as well just do it already. So like, that's my end goal. I would like to be a librarian, but the dream, I guess it's kind of almost like a backup plan, like, you know, my day-to-day job. You know, we all have day-to-day jobs aside from YouTube when we're starting off. So my day-to-day job is library work. And no, I'm not actually working at the library right now. I am kind of getting paid to be at home, and I am still doing my internship, so I get paid from that, which they've been really, really nice about everything. So I'm not going out during this time of, you know, social distancing. I'm not doing that, especially because I do have some health conditions. I do have asthma, so I'm staying home. But while I'm staying home, I am writing. Now, here's the thing. I feel like every English professor I've ever had or teacher probably hates me because I suck at grammar. I literally wrote a paper my freshman year of college about, because almost every English class always asks you to write an essay or something about yourself, you know, kind of. And one of my professors, she wanted me to do that. And this professor I personally disliked. A lot of people didn't like her, because no matter what you would give her, she would always say, it's wrong, you did the instructions wrong. So you can never meet her expectations because you didn't know what her expectations were. Because every time you would do something right, she would say, no, it's wrong. So anyway, so for me, like standing up to her, I wrote an essay called A Story by a Grammatically Incorrect Bookworm. So I pretty much just wrote about how I love reading, this is my forte, and I suck at grammar, I suck at English, but I still want to write a book and write fiction pieces. So I had a friend look over and she was like, you know what would be really funny is if you left all the grammatical mistakes. And I'm like, yeah, that would be really funny. So honestly, I haven't looked at a lot of these pieces in a long time, and I know that was probably like a really long intro, and I don't even know if I'm gonna keep all of that in. But this might be a two-parter, actually, not gonna lie. So I'm just gonna talk about like some of the pieces that I've written. I don't know if I'm gonna actually like go into detail about stuff. You guys can let me know if I should or not. But I've written a lot of pieces that are random, but that piece was pretty much just based off of my life. I've written like other stories, like I've written about investigation stuff, horror. I've done contemporary, surprisingly, even though I don't read a lot of contemporary. And right now I'm working on sci-fi and fiction, and along with fantasy stuff. So I guess this is where I'm gonna cut off and talk a little bit more about, like, I think this is gonna be a two-part video, one about like my experience with English and stuff like that, and then the other video is gonna be more about like, we're gonna get into like the journaling and stuff like that. So I guess, and talk about like where I am with my writing process. So for this part of the video is just like all my English work that I've kind of done over the years. Most of them, I have a bunch of different files on here. I've written about my loved one who passed away, numerous times actually. I've written about that a few times, and they all have different titles. I'm not gonna go into too much detail about like all of the stories, because like I said, I do want to submit some of these pieces to actual websites, and I'm not really sure if I should or how I want to. I am going to probably eventually. It's just when you're a writer, I don't know if anybody feels this, you feel like it's your child. Like you raised it, you had an idea, it came to life, and then you're gonna let it go and set it free, but you don't want it to go. You don't want somebody else to have control over that. And to me, it's kind of, I don't want to, but I do want to. And also I'm afraid that like people are just gonna say you suck at as a writer and you shouldn't be a writer. And one of my favorite mentor of mine told me, he was like, I know you think that you probably aren't the best writer, but you're at your level where you have to be. And even some of the best writers were horrible at grammar and stuff like that, and it wasn't until years and years and years later that they kind of got the hang of it. well, not grammar, but like they weren't the best when they first started out, and then later on you get better as you go. Cassandra, who's one of my favorite writers, she actually, I think she's had a quote where every writer has a really bad story to tell in the beginning, and sometimes it's just best to write that story out and then just throw it away and then start something new. So everybody has that bad story within them that just wants to write it, and then you gotta just let it go. So yeah, for me, I've had a lot of different stories that I've written. I've written a memoir about my life with the loss of my loved one. I've named them differently. I've also written a few stories about my parents when my parents, about my mom and my dad. My dad wasn't really in my life all that much, and my mom, we're not gonna go into it. My mom, she was such a loving character and such a great person, and I loved her so much, and it's just been a lot, and so I've written about them. And there have been a lot of things that I've written over the years about like my own personal experiences. And there have also been a few times where I've actually written about personal relationships with people. I had a really horrible relationship, which I believe I did a story time on this, and I actually am pretty much over it, and I don't know if I ever posted that video or not, because depending on how I feel about it, but I'm not bashing on the person. I wrote about it a long time ago, and it was actually supposed to be a good, happy piece, but looking at it, it's not like the best thing that it could be. And yeah, I mean, writing about relationships and talking about it just kind of helps me a little bit better. I have written poetry before in the past. I'm not the greatest poet in the world, and I've also written about, you know, people who are orphans or running away from the law or like things like that. I've written about too. Some of it is based off of my own personal experience and just things I've watched or things I've read. And I've also written a few like plays. When I was a kid, I used to actually pretend to write, not pretend, but like I would write like weird plays when I was younger. And I actually did take a drama class that's an English-based class that was through my campus, and he was my favorite English professor of all time. And I just had so many great ideas in his class, and I wrote so many cool plays that I want to actually change into real stories, which I did do with one or two of them, I believe. And it was such a great experience, and I really, really do recommend, if anybody who writes novels, writing plays is like the best way to write dialogue. I used to suck at dialogue for a long time. And the other thing too with plays is that you can't really like write too much detail, and I'm a sucker for writing so much detail. One time, I think I can't remember what author it was, but they were like, it's better to write as much as you can, as much detail, because your final product might have all that stuff cut out anyway, so it's better to have more than to have less. But with plays, it really helps you with dialogue. I had one class where like a lot of people were really struggling with dialogue. So a few times they would have different prompts for us to write, like, oh, just write a full conversation and just dialogue. And that stuff really helped. And taking that class on writing plays really helped me a lot, because a lot of times my dialogue is very more empowering, and it has helped me to do the term which everybody in my English classes always loves to say, show don't tell, where pretty much you just show everything that happens and don't be like, oh, so and so did this and then they did this and then this person came, because then it just kind of sounds really weird. I've also messed around with point of view. A lot of my stories used to actually just involve female characters, and I actually have tried writing, I think 2 or 3 times in the point of view of a guy, and it's been interesting. Trying to be somebody else, it's very like almost like actor like you have to play a role to write down these stories. And I've always been interested in storytelling. When I was younger, like I said, a lot of things have happened to me, and a lot of times my way of like coping with it is telling people about it and kind of making it seem like it wasn't that big of a deal, but this is how I cope with it, and kind of like laugh at it, or kind of like take it as like a learning experience that I can tell my children later on, or write about it later on. I don't know if any other writer has that mentality, but I do. So but yeah, I've pretty much have always been a storyteller since I was really young, especially because I was pretty much like thrusted into living with people who didn't really know me much, and they needed to know more about me, so I was just telling them a bunch of stories that would happen in my life, all the near-death experiences I've had that I will write down one day. So sorry about that. But yeah, a lot of these experiences I've written down. I also, so here are a few other things that I wanted to talk about, why I wanted to do this journaling type thing. I mentioned my therapy, and I used to go to therapy a lot when I was a kid. I came from a broken family. My parents got divorced, and my dad really wasn't involved in my life all that much. I don't really talk to him anymore. And it's not a good relationship. And he has his own psychological issues, and a lot of people tell me not to blame him because it's just, you know, he just mentally can't be a father. And I don't like to put all the blame on his inability for that, because it is his choice to be that way. But like I'm saying, like all of this stuff, I used to actually do therapy when I was a kid, and I never felt like it helped me. And it wasn't until about a year and a half ago, I want to say, I started going to therapy. And it's really helped me a lot. I used to be in grief therapy quite a few times, and I don't know, because it's been 7 years, and I feel like I'm still kind of dealing with these issues to this day, and I don't know if they'll ever go away. A lot of people just tell me, oh, just get over it, and I'm like, you kind of can't when something that big actually happens to you and pretty much just changes your whole way of life. And you just have to develop as a different person. And then you're just reminded of, like, you know, events, like really big special occasions, and then you just remember, hey, that person can't be there for you because they're no longer here. Anyway, so when I started doing my therapy, I've been talking to my therapist, telling them I really want to write some letters, especially to some people, for either apologizing or thanking them, or just getting things off my chest, especially with like relationships and stuff like that, family-wise or friend-wise or whatever. And I think especially like during this time, it would help to start sending letters and cards to people, especially because, you know, we can't go party or do stuff, and I just feel like it's a really good time to do this, and I've always wanted to do this since I was a freshman in college. I just never really had time to do it, and I really just want to send letters to people and just, you know, thank them and say whatever I wanted to say off my chest. But with that, I also want to write at least a little bit every day now that we're in quarantine. Don't know what life has in store for us, and I've always felt like the world has been ending ever since I lost said person when I was 13. So I'm kind of used to this. I don't know if, also side note, I don't know if anybody else is feeling this, but I am so stressed out. Like, I can't stop stressing out. I graduate within like a year from now, and I have a lot of student loans, and I'm very stressed out, and I don't know what I'm gonna do afterwards, because a huge part of me wants to do graduate school, but that's expensive, and I don't know if anybody's gonna accept me. So we'll see what happens, but I am so stressed, and I know a lot of people keep telling me everybody's in the same boat, and this and this and this, and, you know, don't stress and relax. And I'm like, I can't not stress. I'm a single person who doesn't have any parents to help them financially, and I know everybody else is in the same boat, but I've just always been a stressful person. I hold a lot of anxiety and stress in general. Whenever I get a phone call, I get stressed out by a phone call. That should not happen. Anyway, and I've told this to my therapist, it's fine. We're working through the issue. it's a psychological thing. I realized that I have a lot of trauma in my life and it depicts through my my writing as well. So yeah, but for the most part, yeah, so and this is why I wanted to do this whole like sit down and talk about like my life experience with English and writing, and I swear the next video will be about like my writing process. I just kind of wanted to like make a video about like why I'm here and why I'm doing this future journaling video type thing, because my therapist told me like it's great if you want to write and journal stuff, and I really want to do this too, and I know a lot of people have been doing this. I just don't want it to seem like forced, where people would just think like, oh, like why are you doing this all of a sudden when you don't really have many videos? But you know, I've waited about 7 years to be making this video, and I waited about 3 or 4 years or 5 years to even make this channel, and I'm kind of tired of waiting, and I just want to do it already. A huge part of me just wants to write and just wants to put this book out there and just push it, because this book, I've been thinking about it for the past 7 years. It's been a huge thing for me. So, and name one English major who has never thought, hey, maybe I could write a book. A lot of people think about it, okay? So you'd be surprised. A lot of people actually think about writing a book. Most of my English major friends, they're all like, yeah, I'm gonna write a book one day. I'm gonna write it. I'm like, so I don't really want any comments of like, oh no, like why are you posting this? You're not really that popular or anything like that. I just want to do it. I just want this to be like a journal for me to just look back on and just be like, you know what, Savannah, you did something, and it kickstarted you doing the writing and doing it more, especially because I don't write every day, and I've tried doing NaNoWriMo, I've tried doing stuff like that, and it never really motivated me to write, and we're gonna get into that in a little bit. And I feel like doing this journal type vlog will actually really make me want to write more, so that I can do updates and stuff like that, especially because this needs to happen. It's been in the works for 7 years. So but another reason why I would like, so yeah, this is gonna be a huge thing maybe on my channel. I don't know. And bear with me. I'm sorry if I look crazy. I'm sorry if I'm just like pushing this on you guys like, hey, I'm writing a novel. Like and I just decided to write a novel. No, I've wanted to write this for like the past 7 years. So and even when I was younger, I would like jokingly tell my dad, like, Dad, like even before like I fell in love with reading, I would be like, Dad, one of these days I'm gonna write a book about you because of all the crap you did to me. So it's like I think my family, my mom always kind of knew that I would be like a storyteller type person, whether it be through art, which I do write stories through art as well, which if you see my video about my comic book strips and stuff like that, I've always been a storyteller type person. I've always loved that. So yeah, I'm sorry if this video was all over the place and if it was just really random. I just wanted to sit down and talk about like my journey and my experience. And then in the next video, the part 2 is going to be about all of my secret novel that I've been wanting to write for the past 7 years on my laptop. So yeah, we're going to talk about that stuff. And yeah, I'm like, I don't want this to be forced. It just feels like good timing to me. I mean, I have nothing else better to do, okay? So I gotta do something, and I can't lose my mind. I feel like anybody else out there has been feeling like they've been losing their mind. I feel like I've been losing my mind. In my last apartment, I was staring at a wall for 5 minutes and just like not thinking. So do something creative. This is what I'm doing. I'm doing something creative, writing my novel so that I don't lose my mind. So if my novel comes out after we're all out of lockdown, don't come for me, okay? Because like this is just something that I feel like it's just the right time to do it. So yeah, okay. So thank you guys for watching. Sorry that this video was all over the place. I'm an all over the place type of person. Like I said, I wasn't very smart when I was a kid, and you know, I like to ramble. My head goes in 1,000 different places, but whatever. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have any comments or questions or anything down below, if I should continue this, because I feel like no matter what I am gonna continue this. So yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments, just leave them down below. If you guys want to watch more videos like this and watch the soon to be journaling episode, I probably said that wrong, didn't I? As you can tell, I really suck at pronouncing words. If you haven't already noticed on my channel, I literally should have just named my channel a Grammatically Incorrect Bookworm. Anybody who wants to petition for me to just like change my channel name to a Grammatically Incorrect Bookworm, please tell me. Like, because I think a huge part of me kind of wants to do that. I might actually just change my banner to a Grammatically Incorrect Bookworm. Just call me that, because that's what I am. So but yeah, if you want to see more videos like this in the future, especially about this journey saga type esque journal day-to-day thing, which I kind of also want to do with like books that I'm gonna read in the future, reviews. So if you guys want to see more videos like that, please like just come back and watch more video. If you guys want to see more videos like that, then subscribe. So what else are you gonna do during this time? I mean, you could cook and do other stuff, but you could also watch my videos. God knows I've been watching a lot of videos that are just random stuff. But yeah, I really enjoyed making this video, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So, and I can't wait to see all you guys in the next video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and yeah, got a lot off my chest, and I didn't think I was gonna get that personal. I'm sorry. I know this is a really weird video, but yeah, I'm a weird person. So, but thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait to see all you guys in the next video. Bye.